Hi, everyone. I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the grants manager for Arts Mid-Hudson. We're here today to talk about the Empowered Artist Award and to go over all the details regarding this program that Arts Mid-Hudson administers to artists in Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster counties in the Mid-Hudson region. Also on our grants team is Vanessa Capuccio-Bear, our grants associate, and we also have Yelka Wickham from who is serving as our seasonal grants assistant to give us some extra help to get us through the rest of 2024. You can reach all of us at grants@artsmidhudson.org. This is really the best way to reach us if you have a question related to this grant. You're welcome to call the office if you have an accessibility issue or really feel the need to want to communicate over the phone. Just know that especially as we get close to the deadline, we may be on pre-scheduled calls for technical assistance and be unable to answer the phone when you call. So really the best way to speak to us is sending a quick email. All of us check that email and we'll get back to you, or set up an appointment and then we'll be able to chat on the phone for up to a half an hour per session to give you some either feedback about what you're working on or just answer your questions. Our phone number is 845-454-3222, extension 11, and you can reach us via email at grants@artsmidhudson.org. Today, we're going to talk about the purpose of the Empowered Artist Award, why it was set up, what we're trying to achieve with this program, and how it's impacted artists so far. We'll talk about the important dates, eligibility factors related to applying and submitting your proposal, how the proposals will be reviewed, and how the 3 artists who receive this year's awards will be selected. We'll take a look at the application together, which you'll see is very brief, but we'll give you some information and some additional tips about how to approach filling it out. And then we'll wrap up. We have Zoom Q&A sessions, several of them scheduled throughout the next month to answer questions related to this program. You can find the up-to-date schedule and RSVP on our website. Get to it by artsmidhudson.org/empowered-artist-award. I'll also show you how to find that page on our website later on in the session today. In order to receive the Zoom access information for the Q&A sessions, you'll have to sign up, then you'll get an email with the Zoom information. If you're signed up for today's info session, you're here in person on Zoom, you already have the Zoom access information for all of the Q&A sessions. They all use the same Zoom meeting room and access code. Once you sign up, you'll get reminders a day before the session or on the morning of the session. You don't need to sign up for each session individually, and you can attend as many of them as you'd like. They're a really good way to hear other people's questions and kind of, maybe then hear something that you weren't thinking of or weren't really considering. And I think, attending more than one is great and very helpful. I often recommend to applicants waiting until closer to the deadline and maybe attending one as well, because I'll have the benefit of having done a lot of technical assistance at that time and have a better sense of what the applicant pool is going to look like. And I might have some more, detailed information that I can share or just observations. If there are any accommodations that will help you be able to apply to this program, please contact us as soon as possible. These include specific translation services for grant assistance, access to large text documents, additional technical support. If you are concerned about your ability to use the computer access or be able to fill out the application, just let us know as soon as possible so that we can help you identify resources so that you will be able to complete the application or help you do it. And we have free technical assistance available to any applicant of this program, where we can answer specific questions, brainstorm with you, and give you feedback on your draft and written parts of the application. You can make an appointment for assistance at artsmidhudson.youcanbook.me. That link is in the guidelines. It's on our website. And if you receive any emails from grants@artsmidhudson.org, or you send an email to us, you'll always see that link in our email signature. So that's a quick way to find it if you've spoken to us over the grants email at all. And I think I've kind of covered technical assistance, but I'll add that it's a really good way to hear about what other people are doing in our region. We do a lot of brainstorming on those calls, and I'm then able to share with you, oh, if you're, you might want to talk to this person or reach out to this organization. This might be an interesting venue based on what you're describing. We have the benefit of talking to a lot of people and having a pulse on what's available and who's working in the area. So it's just a really good way to pick our brain and get something that will be helpful to what you're working on. And we do draft review. It's something that we all really enjoy doing. So don't hesitate to reach out for feedback about your draft. Okay, let's talk about the Empowered Artists Award. So this is an award program that Arts Mid-Hudson started ourselves to provide unrestricted funding awards to artists in our region. Linda Marston Reed, our executive director at Arts Mid-Hudson, she was with us for 10 years. And she really, before she retired from Arts Mid-Hudson, she really wanted to have an impact in something that we had all talked about for years of importance, which was the ability to give out unrestricted funds. If you're familiar with our other funding programs, you know that most of them are public funds that we're administering on behalf of state, county, or municipal entities. And so they come with a lot of strings attached in terms of reporting, specify exactly how funds can or should be spent, and are attached to a project, like a specific project that you're going to do. This is different. It's $3,000 per artist, completely unrestricted. And we have fundraised for this privately at Arts Mid-Hudson. It was a focus of our giving of our Hudson Valley Gives Day fundraising campaign. So that fed into it this year. We also, when we started a couple of years, we raised more than what we would be giving out every year to kind of make sure the program was set up to be long lasting. So we continue to fundraise for this program privately so that it can continue to be an unrestricted award program. So a big thank you to everyone who donated to the Empowered Artists Award. And I really encourage artists, even if it's like a $5 donation towards this award, it's a nice investment to make into our local arts community. And I hope some of you watching will be recipients of it this year. So the goals of this program, it's to address the critical need for artists to have access to unrestricted funds so they can continue their practice, elevate their careers, and be more visible within their community. We're seeking to support Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster County artists in their career growth and stability, and support underrepresented artists in our region, including Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian, people of color, LGBTQ+, disabled, and low-income artists. All artists are encouraged and eligible to apply. However, we are particularly interested in the potential impacts of unrestricted funding on historically marginalized communities and being able to administer these funds so that our pool of recipients, our group of recipients, reflects the diversity of our region. Key information. So this award will provide unrestricted funding to 3 artists in 2024, 1 artist per county in the amount of $3,000 each, one $3,000 payment. So there'll be 1 artist selected in Dutchess, 1 for Orange, and 1 for Ulster. This funding is completely unrestricted. The artists can spend it however they like. We do not ask for a budget on the application. We do not ask, we'll ask anecdotally how the money impacted them and how it was spent, but it can be spent in any way. If an artist, after receiving it, told us it went into their savings account, for example, that would just be information that we would document and would be a part of, how the different ways in which this has supported artists. We are particularly interested in ways that this can support the creation of new work, support the purchase of new equipment, access to educational opportunities, research or travel, general living expenses, bills, studio rental fees, utilities fees, childcare expenses, transportation expenses. There's no limits here. It can fund anything and everything that the artist is hoping to use funding to be able to support the development and the growth of their career. We're particularly interested in some of these that I shouldn't say interested, we're hopeful that it's going to cover some of the stuff that our other funding streams aren't able to fund, like the purchase of new equipment. For example, a lot of artists reach out to us for funding for international travel or even travel within the country to support a career opportunity or a showing opportunity. So we're really interested in hearing back from our recipients that some of these things became possible because they received funding from us. And we have received that feedback over the years. We've now given out 6 of these awards. I'll highlight who some of the past recipients are in a little bit. So yeah, it's really exciting for us to be able to give this, really just trust the artist, invest in the artist, and let that artist then tell us how that money was impactful. Important, it's coming up. Of course, the most important date is the deadline, which is Thursday, November 21st of this year at 11:59 p.m. That is when the application will close and you won't be able to submit anymore. So the deadline is the 21st, and very specifically, it's closing at the just before midnight when it becomes the next day. You will receive funding notification by the end of this year, and the check will be sent by the end of this year. So there'll be a pretty quick turnaround. We will have we'll be celebrating the recipients in the beginning of 2025, hopefully at our annual meeting. That's when we plan to acknowledge and congratulate the recipients, but they'll actually be receiving the funding this year. Eligibility. So all artists applying must meet the following criteria: must be at least 18 years of age at the time of submission, a resident of Dutchess, Orange, or Ulster County in New York State. The applicant artist may not be enrolled in a full-time degree program. If it's a part-time degree program, that's fine, but then you may not be enrolled full-time in a degree program. Artists working in all artistic disciplines are eligible, including but not limited to visual arts, performing, written, digital, traditional, and experimental mediums. And artists can be at any stage of their career, meaning you could be at what is considered an emerging artist. You could be later in your career. We really like to have very few restrictions on who's eligible for this program and open it up so that we can see what comes in and allow the review panel to make a determination. We're hoping, in terms of each year, depending on the applicant pool and what comes in, it's likely to be 3 artists working in 3 different mediums. That has tended to be what happens over the years. It hasn't always happened that way. And that hasn't really happened on purpose, to be honest. It just kind of has been the case that different artists have shown through the process and kind of risen above in terms of the review process for that year. And it has been diverse in terms of medium, as well as where they're located in the 3 counties. And so, especially for the last 2 points, that's any medium and artists at any stage in their career, you will be competing against artists in the applicant pool who are from different mediums, who are at different stages in their career. And just know that's all going to be present within the applicant pool. I'll also, on that note, just while it's in my mind, add in that for the panel, the panelists will be made up of artists working in different mediums to reflect the scope of the mediums that we received as best we can. There's so many artistic mediums, and we can't have somebody representing every medium every year. We tend to go for panelists that are multidisciplinary artists and therefore have expertise in a few different mediums, which is great. So they tend to all kind of get covered by the end of it. But you will be speaking to a panelist who is not in your medium. So I often recommend, especially if there's really technical aspects to your work, to kind of find ways to educate the panel around the way that you're working. And I'll give some examples of that later on when we talk about work samples and the artist statement. You'll be asked to provide a proof of residency, which contains your name and address. The documentation must be dated no earlier than 2023. We get a lot of driver's licenses that are current, but were not issued, were issued in 2022 or 2021, for example. Those are not eligible proof of residency documents. It has to have a date 2023 or later on the document. For that reason, usually the easiest thing to submit is a utility bill, or I would say that's typically, I would say the easiest one because it's going to be very current. When you submit your proof of residency, these are we use Submittable as our application intake platform. we use it because of all the features it offers and that, you're uploading things in a secure environment. I still strongly recommend blacking out any personal information that's on that document because we also don't want to see it either. So for example, if you're going to submit a bank statement, please, all that we need to see is the date, the address, and your name on the document. Anything else can be blacked out other than like the stuff showing that it is a bank document, the header. So please be thoughtful about what you're uploading here. Read this. You'll see it on the guidelines, on the application itself. And of course, we're talking about it now. Please make sure that your document is dated no earlier than 2023. Okay, review procedure. So all submissions will be reviewed using a peer panel evaluation process. A panel of artists will review all submissions and select one artist per county to award. Arts Mid-Hudson staff or board members do not have a vote in this process. So no Arts Mid-Hudson staff scores or votes on which applications are awarded. No board members score or vote. Arts Mid-Hudson staff, like myself, the rest of the grants team, will be present during the meeting. We may participate in the conversation, but we do not score or vote. Board members, in terms of our review process, are invited to kind of audit our review process. So they're always invited to attend and kind of oversee that Arts Mid-Hudson staff is, following all of our guidelines and advisements from our funders in terms of how best practices for running a review process. But again, no vote and no scoring in the process. The peer review panel, I'll just skip here and then I'll skip back to the last slide actually. So the peer review panel is made up of artists working in our region, obviously artists who have not applied to the program. As I said before, it will be a diverse group of artists in terms of demographic information, but also in terms of medium and expertise so that we can kind of cover as many mediums as possible. They are volunteers. They will read a lot of applications. They're going to read all of the applications that are submitted, and then they will come together for one panel meeting where we will look at all the applications together. The way that works is they will review all the applications on Submittable and input any initial notes or scores. So they'll get access to the application as you submitted it, and they'll, read it in the order that it was submitted and, write in any thoughts that come to mind and an initial score, which is not their final score. They can provide their scoring on one review criteria, artistic merit, and they can provide a bonus point if they think that the artist is outstanding in meeting the program goals. That bonus point, based on how competitive this is, that we're only awarding 3 and we're receiving upwards of 100 applications every year, this is really how they identify who their absolute top scorers are. So, that's kind of the process. It's really on a scale of 1 to 5. The panel will, in terms of the score that you can receive. The panel will then meet to discuss all the applications. We'll meet via Zoom, and they can change their scores based on the discussion. So we discussed together, a panelist may have said, I had this at a 4, but after hearing the other panelists talk about this artist and their work, I want to raise it to a 5. They've now become one of my top scorers, or the opposite. And so then at the end of each conversation, they give me their combined final score. I input that into the scoring sheet. And really at the end of the day, we're looking at artists who received the highest possible score. And they're selecting one artist per county based on the notes from the conversation, how they felt about the artist's submission. This process is a little bit different than our other review processes. Our other review processes have more review criteria and more range, and you have an average score. This really, due to how competitive it is and the small number that we're able to award, we do a much more straightforward review process, and they are truly selecting one at the end. Whereas in our other grant programs, we're kind of looking at a group that we can award that's within a certain average score. Conversations are timed to ensure fairness and efficiency during the meeting. So we come in, I look at, we start off, they know how they've scored. I kind of give them a sense of this artist has a lower average score or a higher average score based on how all of them reviewed ahead of time. That helps us either say, okay, this artist, everyone in the group already gave them a 5, right? What do we want to talk about? and quickly move on because we know that that artist is one of the top scorers. There may be some where all the panelists have given that artist kind of a lower score. So that might also be a really quick conversation because the artists or the panelists, I keep saying artists, but all the panelists are artists, are in agreement that this is not one of their top scores and not really going to be in consideration for that year. We have the notes that they wrote on their scoring sheet, and then we gather, any quick comments that are said during the meeting. All of those notes are available to you after you apply. We're happy to give you the feedback that the panelists provided about your application. Just know for this program, you're likely to receive less feedback than you do for some of our other programs, just due to the volume of applications we've received. We have to keep the conversations pretty short. And so therefore, there's just less conversation and less notes, unless, of course, we've had really diligent panelists who have written a lot individually, which often tends to be the case. There's usually at least one panelist who writes a paragraph, for each artist, which is really nice. And then they'll, as I said, we'll look at all the ones that scored the highest score, and they will then select one awardee per county. The evaluation criteria, as I said, is artistic merit, and they'll be assessing this really based on the work samples submitted and the artist statement. Each proposal is rated individually before final selections are made by the panel, as I said. And we really value the conversation and discussion around each. The longer conversations tend to be when there's a split. Some artists or some panelists really feel have rated it very highly, and some have rated it lower. And there's a conversation or discussion, maybe a little bit of negotiation to try and get some panelists to either raise their score, because they, advocate on the panel is really hyping that artist up and want to see them be awarded. It really depends. And just a couple considerations for our review process. This is the third year that this program is being offered. So, the last 2 years I've said it's a little bit more formative. We've learned a lot in the last 2 years to kind of shape our technical assistance and our review process. So you're going to be hearing, maybe more, how should I put it? Maybe more confidence in my suggestions this year in terms of technical assistance, because I have 2 years of information and experience to base it on. And same goes, for when we're running the review process. I think in the past 2 years, we've kind of allowed the panel to help shape that and guide us. And this year, I think even more so than the previous years, we kind of understand how this is possible. How is it possible to whittle down from over 100 applications to only 3 selections? And it's very difficult. It's a difficult conversation for the panel. They're ultimately cutting out a lot of artists who maybe really scored very high and they would love to support, but they're just not able to this year. Another thing I like to say just in general for our review processes and when you're applying to grants overall, when they were being reviewed by people, each panelist brings their own experiences, their interests, and their priorities to the meeting, and they interpret that through our guidelines and our process. So that's why the panel changes every year, and I really encourage you, if you've been denied in the past for this or for another program, to continue applying when the panel is changing, because each year it's a different group and they have different priorities, they have different interests, and they have a different lived experience that impacts how they interpret our guidelines and how they render recommendations. Panelists may favor certain areas. Some years, even just in the past 2 years, I've seen kind of different discussions emerge based on the panel. In 1 year, I really think it was a lot more about the work samples. Like, they were really only interested in the work samples. That was our first year. And that's why we actually, after our first year, we had an additional question on the application. We eliminated it because we did not see it having much impact at all on their deliberation and on how they chose. And we now just have an artist statement and the work samples. I would say last year, it became even more of a combination of the two and their connection to each other, the connection between the artist statement and the work samples. And I think that was the case because there was less writing than the previous year. There was really just one artist statement to focus in on and images to go along with it, and how those two components work together and indicated momentum and potential impact for the artist at this time in their career. That really set apart those that were selected to receive funding. And I'll say that again because I think it's really important for this and for any funding proposal that you're submitting. It's important to communicate why now. Why is this a great time in your artistic career to be given support? Here, you're going to be kind of slipping that information in creative ways because we're only asking for an artist statement, work samples, and a resume or a CV, right? And so talking about an upcoming, tying your artist statement into an upcoming opportunity that you have or a new way that you're working, highlighting any, recent successes, recent awards or grants showing opportunities and how this could propel you forward. Using your CV or bio to add in some of that information. There's a lot of, and we kind of, for each artist, that's why it's great to get technical assistance. We can kind of discuss where you're at in your career, what you're working on, and figure out like what we think is the information that will be most successful to share with the panel. And then determining where are the best places to put that information when we have word count limits on the on the artist statement, page limits on the resume or bio, and you're limited to 10 work samples. Of course, as I'm talking to you, I might be recommending a lot of, stuff that sounds really great that you're working on, be great to fit that in. It's going to be on you to figure out how to do that succinctly and strategically. We still need to keep the word limits, the file limits, and the page limits in place because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get a panel together to review all of this on a volunteer basis. We really need to keep it as succinct as possible. And it's also to your benefit to keep it as succinct as possible. Reading through a lot of information to get to the point or the really hard-hitting aspects, the part that's really going to impact a panelist and make them want to score you one of their highest scores. If they're sifting through a lot of writing or a lot of work samples, you're just giving them more opportunities to kind of get lost in all that information. Really focused, clear information, I found directly correlates to those that are able to receive funding. And I kind of went on a tangent there, but I'll get back to my bullet point that, we have some panelists who might be really focused on the work samples. Others might be really focused on this being an important time in the artist's career to support them, and it's going to have a really direct potential for impact. And, Arts Mid-Hudson, we are always interested that we're going to be able to be in communication with that artist. That's something that we often point out if we know an artist has a great track record with us and has provided excellent reports on other grants in the past or been, shown in our gallery or just, been very diligent and communicative with us during the technical assistance period. If you've had no history with us in the past, those type of things, we might say them during the panel meeting. It's really up to the panelists whether that sways them in any way. And as you're probably gathering, we anticipate an extremely competitive applicant pool. We have so many amazing artists working in our region. We're really blessed in that way. But it makes for competitive review processes, pretty much all of our programs. But I would say this one is maybe the most extreme example just because of how few we're able to give out. Okay, some information on submitting your application. So the deadline, all applications must be submitted by Thursday, November 21st of this year at 11:59 p.m. All of them must be submitted online using our online submission platform, Submittable. If you require additional assistance in completing that application form, please contact us in advance of the deadline. You can find all materials on our website. And I'm going to just check my next slide, but I'm actually going to pause my share. And I'm going to just jump over to our website and show you how to find all the information. All right. Linda, I see you. Can you nod? Are you able to see my screen? Thanks. Thank you so much. All right. This is our website, artsmidhudson.org. You can find all information about our grants programs under Grants and Artist Opportunities and then Grants and Funding. You're looking for the Empowered Artists Award, and you can click Learn More. This is where you'll find all the information for this grant, a link to download the guidelines, a link to the application, a link to RSVP for the Q&A sessions. And this is also where the link will be for this session that's being recorded right now. Information about making an appointment with Arts Mid-Hudson. I'll actually remove appointments will be available soon because they are available now. We just like to wait until after we do our info session to start doing one-on-one appointments. So if you're watching this, this will now be removed after I complete this session. And you can also, if you want to make a donation to the Empowered Artists Award, or if you're just hearing about it, you're not applying, you're welcome to donate here. And you can click here to see our past recipients. I'll actually jump over there now. And, you know, we have a link back to where we just came from, but then below our awardees this past year have been Jean-Marc Superville-Sauvac, Gwen Laster in Dutchess County, Jean-Marc was in Ulster, and Jill Enfield in Orange County. 3 artists working in 3 different mediums, some kind of primary medium focus and some multidiscipline. You can also see our previous awardees down here for 22, Carmen Lizardo, Poet Gold, and Allison McNulty. And what's nice is once you're an Empowered Artist Awardee recipient, you'll kind of live on in this website. We have links to their websites. And then we post any upcoming events they have or ongoing projects that you have going on and try to promote our current Empowered Artist Awardees as much as possible. But let's jump back. I'll just show you again how to get there so it doesn't get lost in the mix. From our website, grants and artist opportunities, grants and funding, Empowered Artist Award, learn more. And then here is where we can jump over to our application. Linda, are you seeing the next page where it says Arts Mid-Hudson 2024 Empowered Art? Thank you. I just want to make sure it's not on the window and it's on the whole screen. Thank you so much. So when you come to, when you click on this link, it'll bring you here. And just know it's bringing you to a new website. It's bringing you to submittable.com, which it looks like it's our website because it says Arts Mid-Hudson here, but it is Submittable. And when you make an account on this page, you are making an account with Submittable so that you can work on your application that, you know, we have posted on their website and save it there. We don't have any access to your account. Like if you forget your password or having technical issues logging in, we can't help there. I mean, I can, just like anything else, I can tell you to try to reset your password. But if you're having any technical issues with your account on Submittable, that's a question for Submittable technical support. And you can get to that stuff. Usually you'll see your name up here. You're seeing Grants Program because I'm in that account right now. But you'll be able to see your name up here and get back to your account and get some, you know, or click on this question mark if you're having technical issues or need help logging in. Once you get to this page, you scroll down and it's going to ask you this every time. I still haven't really figured out why. It's just going to ask you to confirm your address. Once you enter it in once, it should be here every time, but you'll save your address and continue. I know it's going to continue to ask you that because it's still asking me and I do this, you know, all day long. But once you click through that, and I should jump back to say, you may instead see below sign in or create an account. If you don't have an account yet, that's what it's going to ask you to do. And so again, once you're creating an account, you're creating it with Submittable. Then we're right into the application. So just so you know, you won't be able to see the actual application until you log in or create an account. Then once you do, you save your address, it'll bring you to this page. You'll enter in your name. Please enter in the name we should be making out the check to, and right, if you receive the award and writing the contract with. If you have a name that you use for your artistic practice, please enter it here under AKA, and then on all promotion, that's where we'll use what you've entered in under AKA and not your legal name. And if you have, if you would like to provide pronouns, you can enter them in here. If not, we will just use gender neutral pronouns when reviewing your application. We'll ask you for your email, your phone number, your address, what county you're in, ask you to select the primary background of the artist. And if you have a website, you can enter in your website link here. I'll say on the topic of websites, obviously this is not a required field. Any required fields have this little, in red, required in parentheses next to it. So if you don't have a website, that's fine. I haven't noticed an artist be in an advantage just because they have a website. I have noticed that when you put a website here, some panelists are going to click on them and some are not. Some are going to really just trust in what has been submitted on the application. Sometimes panelists don't like to click on outside links. Submittable can't really ensure that the link that you're providing is not going to cause us any problems on our computer on the other end, unfortunately. And so, some panelists click on links, some don't. Some panelists will definitely click on the website and may even do additional research outside and kind of like look around at any other information about the artist. And a comment I heard a lot last year in particular was I preferred the work on their website to the work they submitted on the application. And I don't, that's a really, I heard it so often. And honestly, sometimes I related. Sometimes I was like, I also kind of prefer the work on their website to what was on the application. We can't really predict that if this is going to be a panel this year that, especially depend on the number of applications we receive, is going to take the extra step and look at every website and really dig through it, or if they're going to kind of stick to what's been submitted. But if you're submitting and you have an active artist website, I would encourage you to make sure it's generally up to date, and that, you're looking at what's available on your website and you're considering that in the context of what you're uploading to us on this application form, because I would say there's a good chance they're going to look at your website, or somebody from the panel will look at your website and then talk about that on the panel. That being said, we're asking you to submit recent work, and your website might have older work that in some cases they kind of prefer the older work, and that wouldn't be what I would necessarily advise you to submit on this application. But, it's just something to think about. I don't really have a solution or an answer to it, but it just came up so often last year that I thought I would share it as food for thought in this information session. I think the main takeaway is, first of all, if like you have a news or a blog section on your website that it's been updated somewhat recently, or you have a note saying like this is paused and there are no real updates at this time, whatever it might be, just evidence that the website is still being used and updated, and just thinking about what they're going to see when they click on the link and they take a look at the website. This is where you will write your artist statement. It's limited to 600 words. I have a slide where we'll talk all about the artist statement, so I'm going to skip over this for now, even though this is a very big component of the application. This is the only written question on the application. And then you'll be allowed to upload a CV, a resume, or a bio, whatever you'd like. It's limited to 2 pages. And here you might consider, if you have a CV that you want to upload, and you could have a short bio at the top of your resume or CV, and then have your most notable stuff that you want, in resume or CV style to follow. You can kind of do a combination bio CV. I've seen that be the most effective, honestly. I've seen that be successful. And I just think it's really a great document to have because it kind of has everything all at once. It allows you to have a little bit of narrative information around the trajectory of your career alongside your accomplishments, your education, and your relevant experience. But if you just want to upload a straight up CV or just a bio, that's also fine. You'll be meeting the eligibility requirement. You'll upload a proof of residency here. Again, same information you received. I think the easiest thing to upload is a utility bill. But if you have any questions about this, please reach out to us, and you can upload a PDF or a JPEG. If you're uploading anything you upload to an application ever, especially if you like export it to PDF or you export it to JPEG, open the file and make sure it's not totally blank. We got a lot of documents this year that you open up a PDF and it's just a blank page, and stuff like that can happen. So, maybe there was 2 pages and you accidentally selected the blank page hanging out at the bottom, who knows? Just don't export something and then immediately upload it to the application. Open the file and make sure everything is legible and visible that you want it to be there. And then this is where you will upload your work samples. We get this question a lot. It says select up to 11 files. right? Work samples up to 10 files. And then further, more information. You may attach one PDF descriptive list of your work samples here. So that's a total of 11 files. You're allowed to do 10 work samples. And if you want to upload a descriptive list of what the work samples are, that's the 11th file. We'll accept PDFs, JPEGs, MP3s, MP4s, WAV files, and MOV files. If you're watching this now and you're seeing this, Submittable must have reset this, and we are not going to accept MOV files. I'm going to make a note to remove that. Submittable does this sometimes. Arts Mid-Hudson operates entirely on PCs. We don't work on Macs, and a lot of our panelists don't work on Macs, and therefore an MOV file gives a lot of issues. First of all, not appearing pixelated on our end, and not giving us glitches, or even, not showing up at all. So it says MOV here right now. It will not in about 20 minutes when this info session ends, because I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove it. So if you have a video file and you're working on a Mac, export it to an MP4. This is where you'll upload your work samples. You'll click choose a file. It'll give you a window, and you'll be able to upload the files that you want to attach here. You can do that descriptive list. Or you can use this notes on work sample section to type in that list here. Either one is totally fine. It's up to you how you want to structure it. If you're going to give notes on the work samples, that would be, reference the file name, the title, the medium, the size, the year, and then any extremely brief contextual information that the panel would need to know, like this was a site-specific installation for this location. This work was made in collaboration with this community through grant support from this program. This is a multimedia installation, and the viewer would stand at this location, and it will be a 360 installation. Whatever it might be, it's like stuff to be able to understand the context in which that work exists. It's not an additional works artist statement for that individual piece. I would recommend any notes beyond the title, medium, size, and year should be restricted to no more than one sentence per image. You don't want to give a whole bunch of additional text that looks like you're trying to get around the limits that we've set on the application. It's just going to be extra information that they may or may not read at that point. And then there's a couple survey questions very quickly asking you how you heard about this, how it would impact you, if you've applied to us before, and if you received any addition from staff when doing your application. So just click those off. They have no impact on how you're reviewed. They are really just survey questions that we use to create data points to be able to fundraise for this program. The end, just read the certification and sign. When we say sign, please type your name here. You don't need, there's no way for you to sign. You're not applying. We get that question a lot. Just type your name. That's you affirming that you've read the certification and everything you've submitted is accurate and you're representing your own work. While you're working, this page will auto save your draft. It's happening constantly, but I like to press the save button. So I always recommend scrolling down to the bottom as you're working and clicking save draft. If you're ever going to leave this page, press save draft. I also do not recommend, I know a lot of people work this way where maybe you open this tab on your browser and you just leave it open for weeks, and work on it. Maybe you press save. That is a really easy way to get this glitched. So, work on it, save your draft, X out the page when you're done working on it. Don't leave it open for a long time. This is how really any internet, in any form on the internet, could get glitched. They're not really designed to be left open for long periods of time. And once you're done and you're ready to submit, you'll just press submit. And we actually can see your draft in real time. Whenever you press save draft, we can see it. So if you want to get draft feedback, all you have to do is submit a request to get feedback for your draft, and then we'll be able to see it. You don't have to send anything to us. Just make sure it's on here. Obviously, if you're working on it on another, Google Docs or whatever, move it over here. It's pretty short. And I just recommend getting in here, don't work offline for this for too long. There's not that much that needs to be submitted here. I would just start dropping stuff in, filling out like the simple questions that you can fill out. The main thing you're going to be working on is, I would say, your work samples, fine tuning your work samples, fine tuning whether it's CV, resume, or bio, or combination, and working on this artist statement response. Get your proof of residency in here right away and answer the other questions. And then at least you've established a draft and you're in here working. Okay, I'm going to jump back to my presentation. I have a couple more slides and then we will wrap up. So some tips with the artist statement. 600 word limit. Again, there's a couple things that you want to consider here. This isn't, it's an artist statement, but it's an artist statement for the purpose of this application process. So you might have previous artist statements that you've written, and that's going to be great raw material that you can use to craft an artist statement that is specific to this application that you're submitting. I say that because you want to relate it to the work samples that you end up uploading that are available to you at this time, that, your most recent relevant work to what you're working on. And you also might want to add in some information about where you are in your career. It might not be structured exactly like an artist statement that would appear, in a gallery booklet, for example, or even on your website. You might be adding in some information here that you want the panel to know about that you're not being directly asked, because the application is only asking for one 600 word response in the form of an artist statement related to your work samples. You're trying to provide the panel with a sense of your focus as an artist and how you define your artistic practice. So a lot of us are multidisciplinary artists. We're working in a few different mediums, and we get this question a lot around, like, where should I focus? I'm a performance artist. I'm also a photographer, and I also create books, for example. You're trying to give a holistic sense of yourself as an artist. So if you are a multidisciplinary artist, I think that's going to be clear from your bio, your CV, your resume, from your website, if you have one. I think kind of shying away from aspects of your overall practice are going to, if the panel happens to be familiar with you, they might say, I don't know why this artist isn't talking about their photographic work, because that's a huge part of their practice, for example. So you're trying to give a sense of your approach to your artistic practice and all the different forms that takes, maybe in different mediums, different scale, working in, maybe sometimes you work really small, or you work in a few different mediums, but you always work really small, for example. You're trying to find through lines in different projects you've done, different ways of working, and presenting just a sense of what you're focused on as an artist and how you define your practice. And this is something that I think I'm an artist as well. I need to be in community with other artists to get a sense of this. I need to talk about my work with other people. I encourage you, as you're working on this, it's a great opportunity to connect to other artists in your lives, people who appreciate your artistic practice, and kind of just talk to them about your work. And that what you end up saying out loud, especially if you struggle with writer's block or just getting the words down on paper, that becomes raw material as well that you can use to craft your artist statement. I recommend, maybe sitting down with another artist friend, talking about, maybe you're both going to apply, talk about each other's practice, talk about what the experience is like seeing each other's work, interacting with each other's work, and take a whole bunch of notes while you're having that conversation about the key things that come up. Just like if any of us were in a critique setting and, at any point, that's really great information that you get around how others are perceiving your work. And then, of course, speaking to us, we're really good at listening to, it's my favorite part of my job, listening to artists talk about their practice, talk about what they're trying to achieve with their work, and then trying to pick out the parts that I think are going to be most successful in showing, putting your best foot forward and putting together a statement that really reflects where you are in your artistic career at this time. So this might include an overview of ideas or conceptual ideas, themes you typically explore in your work, materials or techniques you typically use, and references to specific work samples. So you might talk about, these are conceptual ideas that I typically explore. I'm working in this technique or medium, and you can see this in these bodies of work. And then those are actually the work samples attached, right? So you're drawing, you're you're writing the connective tissue so that they'll see the work samples and, be able to see all of the connections between your work and your practice. Of course, you want them to be able to see that just looking at the work samples and experiencing on their own. And that's, really makes for the strongest applications when the work samples speak for themselves. But what then sets it even over the edge is when, and really rise to the highest level of scores, is when the work speaks for itself and the artist statement provides really excellent context, so the panel can get excited about deeper meaning, ways that this really has impacts on audiences. There's lots of stuff that can come out of, that whole picture that you're seeing in the artist statement and the work samples that can then get, it's kind of like a sense of discovery where the panel is looking at the work samples and making their own connections. And when that's reinforced by what they read, they get really excited. As you might experience yourself looking at an artist's work. Artist statements do not need to follow a set format, but we will only accept artist statements in writing. We will not accept videos or audio recordings. They have to be submitted in this way. And I really encourage you on that note to, you might get some guidance in terms of like information that's out there about how to write an artist statement. I might give you some guidance on the phone if you do a call with us and get some feedback around like how to structure it so that it is clear, but don't use your own artist voice in that process. And I think also some of the strongest artist statements are those where there's a unique voice behind it and it kind of reflects the work. This might be in the words you choose, in the structure, in, I can think of a lot of artist statements that, they're really unique in the way they were written and that stood out for whatever reason. We encourage you to think expansively about how you may use this space to represent your artistic practice. That's kind of going back to, that's actually my bullet where I talk about artist voice. And then write for someone who knows nothing about you. You want to assume that there are going to be people on the panel who have never heard of you, never heard of your artistic practice, and you don't want to leave them making assumptions. So you want to, write as if you're introducing yourself. And if you're stuck, I strongly, strongly recommend free writing or outlining. It's the tool I use to write grant applications myself and any kind of writing I do for my own artistic practice. If I, for the artist, if I was sitting down to write this artist statement myself, the first thing I would do is just like set a 15-minute timer for myself and just think about my artistic practice, look at my work samples and just write down every phrase, every word, just bits of information that come to mind, things that are, you're thinking about writing an application and they're just phrases that might start bopping around in your head that you may want to incorporate. Get those down on paper. And then that becomes, again, raw material that you can use to write the more finished and refined artist statement. Outlining is also really helpful in that way in terms of just saying, this is the list. This is a list of information that I want to provide in this artist statement, list of things I want to say. And this is the order I'm going to say them in. And that helps you get organized and make sure you're following something that's maybe chronological, or maybe, first I'm going to talk about my technical focuses, then I'm going to talk about my conceptual focuses, then I'm going to talk about, recent relevant bodies of work that reflect the combination of those, where those two meet. I think just kind of laying that out in order is really helpful in getting organized. And that's something else we're really good at in terms of giving feedback on our grants team, is looking at an artist statement and making some suggestions about how to reorder information so it's punchier and more successful. Some tips about the work samples. So your work samples should support your words and your words should support your work samples. It's very disappointing for a panelist to read an artist statement and then get to the work samples and it doesn't reflect what they read at all, for example. So think about your work samples when writing your artist statement. I think really you need to start with the work samples, maybe start with 8 that you feel really confident you want to submit, or 6 that you feel really confident you want to submit. Start working on your artist statement around those. And then that might trigger you to think of additional work samples that you want to pull in. to reflect the way that your writing is going. We recommend uploading a cohesive body of work, and that typically, that can be a lot of things, especially if you're a multidisciplinary artist. That might mean, works in different mediums that are connected thematically or conceptually, that were created maybe to complement each other, even if they're in different mediums. If you really are focused, you are an oil painter, and all of that is the breadth of, that is the focus of your artistic work. Then thinking about ways that you can submit a body of work that is cohesive in terms of the way of working, techniques you use, materials used, and ideas explored. And you want to indicate that cohesion through your writing. Again, it's great if the work speaks for itself and visually, or, in terms of literary artists, you read it, you get a sense of the cohesion of the work sample submitted. Video artists, you get a sense of the cohesion submitted, just by viewing it, listening to it, or reading it. But if it's even better when it's reinforced by the artist statement. Provide work samples that are relevant to the intention of your application, your goals, and your career trajectory. Again, I think it's important to show your overall scope as an artist, and not like hide aspects of your artistic career necessarily. But if it's become less of a focus, then, you might reference, for example, say you're really focused on your photography work, for the past 5 years, but you had done video work in the past. Maybe all of your work samples are going to be photos, but your video work should be referenced somewhere, whether it's on your CV or resume, in your bio, or somewhere within your artist statement. How did your previous work inform how you've gotten to this point and how you've become more focused on photography, for example? Include the descriptive list or use the note section. It's really important that, for example, include the sizes of the pieces if they're visual arts pieces. It's, otherwise we're not going to understand, it's very hard to tell from a digital image how big something is unless there's something to scale. Label your files clearly. Come up with a system of naming your files, like last name 01 AMH, or EAA for Empowered Artists Award, whatever it is. Don't just put long strings of numbers. Everything stays together in Submittable. That's why we use it, but it's just helpful to make sure things are labeled clearly, because then you're able to very clearly reference them in your descriptive list or in that note section. So if you say, last name, title of the piece as the file name, then you reference that on the list. We're going to be able to jump to it really quickly instead of seeing long strings of numbers and then having to look around, try to figure out which one it is. Do not upload excessively large files. For visual art samples like photographs, I recommend, if it's full screen on your computer and does not appear pixelated, that is the threshold that you're trying to achieve. I don't make recommendations around pixel dimensions or file sizes because Submittable is not very clear with us around the limits or how that's going to be interpreted and how that's going to be displayed on their site. I just recommend keeping them as low as possible. You'll see for literary samples, no more than 10 pages per sample, and no more. I recommend shorter samples, though. Honestly, for literary samples, I would really recommend maybe excerpts, not full pieces, or pieces that are under the set limit. And for video and audio files, I don't recommend over 3 minutes per file. This has to do, especially with video files, this has to do with them loading and being visible on our side. If it's a really long video, it's going to take a long time to load. Panelists might be working on different internet speeds based on where they are and what their service is like, and you don't want to mess around with that. We found good success in MP4 files that are under 3 minutes. Those just work very beautifully on our system. I would say for audio files, under 3 minutes is like a better guarantee that they're going to listen to the entire file and not skip around. If you uploaded 10-minute songs, right? That's going to be a lot. That's a lot for them to listen to, and they're likely to skip around. If you keep it focused on the excerpts and the areas that you most want them to see, more likely to be successful. If you have any questions about how the file is appearing for us once you upload it, really the only way for us to check this is for you to submit your application. So once you submit your application, If it's before the deadline, I can go in and say, yep, all of the files are uploading or opening fine for us. Everything's visible. Nothing is taking an excessively long time to load, so forth. If you, looks good. Or we might say, hey, this file is completely blank, or this one is taking a really long time to upload, or it's giving us an error message. We can actually open your application for editing, and you'll be able to go in and replace the file. So even if you're, say you're still working on the artist statement, but you want to check your files and you want to do it in a good amount of time for the deadline, you can send us an email. Hey, I really want you to check my work samples, like Lilia talked about in the info session. As long as every field has something written in it, you'll be able to submit, and then we'll immediately open it for editing. So you'll be able to continue to work on your artist statement, continue to upload files, and we'll be able to check the files and make sure that they're opening properly on our end. Responsibilities of awardees. The reporting requirements are very minimal. It's really just to remain in communication with us while you're a current Empowered Artist awardee. We email the awardees monthly, find out if they have anything going on that we can promote. And we reach out periodically for quotes about the impact it's had on their career. And we may ask them to attend an event and represent Arts Mid-Hudson, based on their availability. If they're able to, that's great. And so, it's very flexible because, again, this is an award. We just want to give unrestricted support. So we're not going to then overburden the awardees with reporting requirements. There is no written report other than submitting testimonials periodically, quotes about how it's impacted you. And we tend to, at the end, have like an interview in person where we'll meet, get coffee, or meet in the artist studio and just talk about what the impact was, maybe take some photos, that kind of stuff. And then all of that, just so you know, is going to then be used in fundraising efforts in the future to continue the program and expand the program. So just know, if you become an Empowered Artist awardee, we're going to use quotes and photographs to continue to fundraise for this award. Final tips, and then we're wrapping up. First steps, I really recommend getting on our website, looking at the guidelines, look at the application yourself, and see what you're going to need to submit. Start organizing digital copies of the required attachments. Don't leave getting your work samples together for the last minute, or scanning your proof of residency or taking a photo of your proof of residency. That's really the quickest way. If you have a utility bill or you have your driver's license, it was issued 23 or later, you can just take a picture on your phone, email that to yourself, and then that's the file that you'll upload for your proof of residency. And just get that in there as soon as possible so you don't have to worry about it. I don't recommend rushing. Really, for any kind of program where they're offering technical assistance like we are, I'm going to learn things over the course of this technical assistance period. I'm going to get a sense of what the applicant pool is looking like. I'm going to refine my advice that myself, Vanessa, and Yelka, as we talk to people and give technical assistance. So you might even get better technical assistance closer to the deadline, to be perfectly honest, because we have the benefit of being on calls all day long and honing those, getting those skills up and having our script really down, right? So I don't recommend, waiting until the day of or the day before to submit, even though I know, based on data, 60% of our applicants submit on the day of the deadline. So no shame, but you want to be in that 40% that's submitting ahead of time, so you have time to check your work samples are working, get some feedback, and attend one of the later Q&A sessions just to make sure there's no new information we're sharing that might, jog something in your mind and make you think, oh, I want to change a little section of my artist statement in light of what I just heard on that Q&A. And at any time, make an appointment with us to receive feedback or to brainstorm and discuss what you're planning to submit. These are the dates for the Zoom Q&A sessions: November 1st at 11 a.m., November 7th at 4 p.m., November 13th at 11 a.m., November 19th at 4 p.m., and November 21st, which is the day of the deadline, at 11:30. We like to do a last-minute questions session on the day of the deadline, just so that we can deal with the volume of calls that would otherwise be coming in. So if you're on the day of the deadline and you happen to be watching this then or close to it, we're going to have a Q&A session that morning. And before calling us that day, just try to make this session or send us an email, because we're going to be getting a lot of calls. Thank you so much for your interest in this program. Again, I'm Lilia Perez. I'm the grants manager for Arts Mid-Hudson. You can reach me and our entire grants team, including Vanessa and Yelka, at grants@artsmidhudson.org. You can call us at 845-454-3222, extension 11. Although I do really strongly recommend grants@artsmidhudson.org because there's 3 of us in there. We answer it pretty quickly, especially if it's a quick question, or we can just get you right into scheduling an appointment with us. And I just want to say thank you in advance for all of the work that you will do working on this application. I know it is, labor on your part. I really encourage you to take advantage of the free technical assistance that we offer, because then we can help you think about your artistic practice, think about your writing, what work samples you're submitting, and all of that work, even if you don't receive the Empowered Artist Award, can help you in getting your materials together to submit to other grant opportunities, other awards, other calls for art in the future. So and of course, if you apply, you'll be able to get feedback about why you did or did not receive funding. So those are kind of the services we offer. We would love to be giving out. I would be love to giving out 100 of these every year, right? But we're giving out 3 based on the funds we have available. The service we can offer in place of more awards is this free assistance and free feedback to get your materials together to be able to apply to other stuff and our other grants programs and other funders. So that being said, though, we really, really value the effort that you put into it. We don't take it for granted, and we are here ready to help and answer your questions.